Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello and welcome to another Kneel Before Pod interview. I'm Craig, and this time I had the pleasure of talking to Shaun Sipos, who plays Devin Taltherd in Dark Matter, Aaron Whitmore in The Vampire Diaries, and of course most recently, Adam Strange in Krypton. Join us as we discuss his career, Krypton's cancellation, and some character quirks you may have missed on the show. Please accept my apologies for the audio being spotty in places, but this was recorded on Skype, and I'm sure you know how temperamental that can be. Anyway, I'll shut up and you can enjoy. So I'm delighted to be joined on Kneel Before Pod with Shaun Sipos. Hi, welcome on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's been great to arrange this time with you. First of all, I guess I'll just say a big condolences for the show being cancelled. The announcement came out yesterday as of time of recording, so I was a bit upset by it, and I imagine it's probably not the best news for you guys either.
No, but, I would say, as opposed to condolences, perhaps congratulations on making a wonderful show that we've all enjoyed. Because if it were up to us, we'd be filming a third season with, I spoke with Cam Welsh and some of the other creatives on the team, and they were planning for a pretty spectacular third season that I think would have left the second one in the dust. But, it's not up to us. If you plant your seed and you till your fields and you prep it, and it's not up to you whether or not it rains.
That's a good way of looking at it. Although I've heard that they're shopping it around maybe like streaming services and things like that, so all hope doesn't seem lost.
No, all hope is not lost. So when you hang out with an owl long enough, you pick that up.
Yeah. I mean, The Expanse got brought back, Lucifer got brought back, so it could be you guys too. I hope so.
It could be. So, you never know.
Okay, so we'll just start off with a little bit about yourself. Kind of what was your early life like, your upbringing, and how did you kind of get into the acting sphere? How did you get on that path?
I fear that this is going to be incredibly boring explaining this, but
I'm sure it won't.
I grew up in Vancouver Island and fairly big family. And I grew up mainly playing competitive sports. I played competitive hockey and didn't really have anything to do with the arts, although I did write. I found some of my old writings from when I was 10, 11, 12, and they were actually quite good. I looked up some of them to see if I'd perhaps plagiarized them or something. I couldn't find anything. But that's my only link to the arts, really and truly. So I started acting 18. I was getting close to graduating, and I was planning on being a doctor.
All right, okay.
My dentist's wife asked me what I was going to do, and I told her. And I think I would have joined the military and gone through that route so I didn't come up with debt. So I told her that, and she said, well, what about, acting? She had a friend who was an agent, and she said, I'll set you guys up. So out of sheer curiosity, I went to his agent. There was an action coach, and they just handed me a set of sides and said, read these. So I read them, and this coach went, oh, okay, well, why don't you come and do a couple classes and then communicate with the agent? I said, okay. So I went and I did a few classes for maybe a month, and then she called the agent and said, you should represent him. And she started sending me out, and a little while later, I managed to be fortunate enough to book a TV show, and that got picked up, and they were like, you got to come down to L.A., film this. I remember thinking, well, shit, I was just doing this as something fun to occupy my time. And then it sort of put my ideas of going to med school on hold because I had to come down. I'd signed a contract, and then I started acting. And then I enjoyed it, and I thought, geez, how do I get good? And so I started that process of self-work, introspection, which is truly what you need because you are your own instrument. And if you can't figure out how it works and how other people work, I don't think you can be very good at it.
And you got a series regular gig on your second try on TV, so was that daunting to go from nothing essentially into being one of the cast, or was it easy enough to kind of slide into?
No, it was daunting for sure because you don't know what. I came down to L.A., obviously, to film the show. I believe they have it as a series reg. No, it was my first thing, actually, was series reg.
Yeah, it's just your IMDb page. There's a one-shot thing before that on the list, so maybe you filmed that after, I don't know.
Which one's on the list there?
So your first credit is Special Unit 2 as Teen Guy.
That wasn't the first thing that I'd ever done, but that might have been the second thing, because I filmed the pilot for this show called Maybe It's Me, and that's what I was at, a series reg on. A very short-lived series reg. But I went on that, and I did get in trouble on that because you don't know set etiquette. I didn't understand things. I remember one time I had a bunch of time in between my scenes. I think there was a few scenes in between one that I had already shot and the one that I was to shoot next. And one of the guys said, yeah, just go shoot some hoops, go shoot some basketball and occupy your time. And I went, oh, okay. So I went out. I was playing some basketball. And then I came back and someone said, geez, you're all sweaty. And I said, yeah, someone told me to go play basketball. And they said, geez, shower. So I went, took a shower, came back. Hair and makeup were furious. They had to redo my hair, my makeup, and everything. And I got in trouble. But, now I would be like, that's crazy that someone would do that. But at the time, I was 18 years old. I had no idea.
And you were told to do it as well, so that wouldn't have helped.
Yeah, someone just kind of like casually was like, go play some basketball. I think it was an AD, too. And then someone else, I can't remember who, said you should just take a shower. But, you live and learn.
Yeah, it's something not to do again, I suppose.
Yeah, but for sure it's daunting because you just don't know. It's a new world. I remember someone on the set, I won't say who, a little mean to me. And I remember this person saying, you know how lucky you are? Like people audition for years and don't get anything and whatever started and you're on a show. And then I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh, okay.
So you've mentioned some of your hobbies like competitive sports and stuff. Is there anything else you enjoy doing? What do you kind of watch in your spare time? Is it the sci-fi stuff along the lines of Krypton, or do you have another sort of area of interest? Or is it just everything?
There's a couple questions there, but so I'll start with the first. In terms of hobbies, there's a bunch of hobbies that I do, and I box and do. I've started training some Muay Thai, which is a lot of fun. It keeps me in shape. Doesn't feel like I'm working out. And then I also enjoy dirt biking, racing. If I can take a car on the track, that's fantastic. But a lot of times it's just some track time on a motorcycle, which is nice. And a lot of people think that taking a motorcycle on the track is dangerous, but it's actually a lot safer than just riding one in the streets. But there's a lot of anything that kind of is a challenge. I enjoy spearfishing because it makes me present. And, I have a bunch of, I think hobbies are important. And then, I try and watch either a movie or an episode of TV a day. I try and watch everything. Some movies are work and kind of don't feel like watching them, but I'll watch them for their artistic take on things. But typically what I enjoy watching is, I do enjoy sci-fi stuff. I enjoy fantasy type stuff. So I don't know how many times I've watched Lord of the Rings, but it's quite numerous. And then action-y stuff, I've seen that movie I don't even know how many times. So a lot of those are what I will enjoy watching. Sit down and just go, okay, because I don't have to think about it. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is Sicario.
It's a great film.
Great film. And that's really engaging. I mean, the other things I kind of can switch off to a degree, like the Top Guns. I can kind of just go, okay, I'm able to just kind of enjoy it. Movies like Sicario really hooked me in, and I'm thoroughly engaged and enthralled and inspired and motivated. I really like movies that also make me say to myself, can you imagine? Things like Midnight Special. I remember actually as a kid, The Rocketeer did that.
That's another great one.
Yeah. Which kind of ties into playing Adam Strange.
Yeah. Another jetpack.
They told me, he's got a jetpack. Because initially I didn't know. And I just went, hold on a second. Are you telling me that I'll potentially be getting to fly around with a jetpack? And they were like, yeah, not right away, but yeah. Shit, okay. We had a brief moment of it at the end of the second season.
Yeah, a drunken misfire.
Yeah. And
you've done some horror as well. Are you a fan of horror films? And kind of what's it like being on a set and seeing what's behind all the scares? I imagine it can ruin them to some degree.
To some degree, but I'm not a massive fan of horror films. And to be honest, they're kind of draining to film. I do enjoy it nonetheless because I enjoy working and I enjoy getting into a character and working through the motions of it. But they can be simply because you're causing yourself to become in a frightened state, right? So you're heightened. And when you do that, your body doesn't know the difference as to what's real or what's fake. Your brain does, right? So your brain's able to, after a scene, go, no, this isn't real. Just calm down. But your body, you still has a reaction. That's why people can cry, right? So they're on in front of the camera and they think of things called sense memory. They think of stuff and may become present, and they hook into something, whether it's the other person, a memory, whatever, and their body thinks it's real. Their body thinks they are either reliving a trauma or expressing a trauma or whatever it is, and they have a chemical reaction, an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Their body, for all intents and purposes, thinks that's real. So that's draining, which means depending on, and I actually, my girlfriend showed me something that was fascinating, that the actual chemical makeup of tears differs as to what type of tears you're crying. And let me explain that. If you cry happy tears, tears of joy, the chemical makeup, the actual like molecular makeup of that tear is different than if you cry tears of sorrow.
I didn't know that.
Really interesting, which kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't. If you're crying sadness, right? If you're doing something that's sad and really sorrowful and dreary, when you experience those emotions, your brain releases cortisol, a stress hormone, which is a depressant, right?
Yeah.
Versus when you feel good, you're getting hits of dopamine, serotonin, make you feel good, happy. So if you're doing a project that was encouraging that, where that character is, say, on top of the world and extremely happy, then you're going to leave set feeling great. And then if you're doing the opposite, sometimes you leave set, you're exhausted, and it can sort of carry over into your life and take a moment to shake off.
The definition of taking your work home with you, basically.
Yeah, and sometimes you take your work home by choice. You don't want to let go of that character. But sometimes it does trail behind you like a little bit of a shadow.
Or like Brainiac in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it all back to Krypton.
Yeah.
You worked on an Uwe Boll film. Safe to say he's pretty infamous within the industry. So what was that experience like? What was he like to work with? And it was an action film as far as I can tell. So that must have been cool.
A lot of people, I shouldn't say don't like the guy. A lot of people don't like his film. I want to say that the film that I worked on him with, that was one that was exhausting. But I had a good experience with Uwe, and I think he's an incredibly nice guy. I like him. I haven't watched all his films, but I think he's a really nice guy.
I find them a bit of a guilty pleasure. I kind of enjoy watching them because, there is something to take from them. The kind of Sharknado vibe where, it's not the best film in the world, but it's enjoyable nonetheless. Yeah. And there's definitely a place for that.
Oh, absolutely.
I haven't seen Rampage. I'll need to look that out and see what it's like.
That's a tricky one. Rampage is about a guy who essentially is going around shooting people. It's like the gun issues that America's having right now with these acts of terrorism, mass shootings. And it is, in a way, playing off of that. And when we had shot the first one, I remember, Columbine had happened and we were filming this. And I went, this is kind of fucked up. And I was hesitant on shooting that. But I also was an actor in need of work. Yeah. And to pay my bills. But the continuing, I don't know how many movies they've done of it. I personally think that part of what art is to reflect what's going on in society. And I think that paintings do that. I think that sculptures will do that. I think that, many, many artists do that. Film and television does that, albeit I think that it's better when they do it on a more shrouded note that makes you really think rather than on the nose. But with some films, it seems like they support or capitalize on things that are happening, usually bad things. Yeah. And that one, I think, is a particularly bad thing. And I don't like the glorification of it. And I'm a part of that first film. Granted, I'm not doing anything bad, but I am a part of it, and there is a part of me that goes, I wish at that time, if I could go back, I wouldn't have done that. Not because I don't like Uwe, but just because I think it glorifies something that's wrong, that I don't think that people should do.
That's fair, very fair. Got to pay the bills, though.
You do.
You were on Vampire Diaries, which was a massive show with an equally massive following. So what was it like joining the cast and sort of getting your first taste of that kind of fandom? Were you kind of assaulted by it? Or assaulted is the wrong word, but, did you experience a great deal of that, or was it kind of more subdued?
I experienced some of it. It wasn't too bad. my character was, initially there were some people that were a little aggressive. But it wasn't bad. And one of my best friends is Paul Wesley, so it was nice to join him, just get to hang out with him, because they filmed that in Atlanta, and I lived in Los Angeles, so you don't get to see your friends all the time, so it's nice when you get to hang out with them. And then the cast, I already knew them. Julie Plec, who's wonderful, I already knew her, and it was just a nice experience. It was great to be able to come on board and play with them for a bit. The fans weren't bad to me. They were pretty supportive. But, yeah. I mean, there's always fans and people who send you some death threats or what have you. And really and truly, it's a lot of times probably some 10-year-old behind a keyboard. So, what are you going to do? A lot of people say things online that I don't think they would say in person.
No, definitely not. The last thing you want is a fully toxic fandom. So from what I've seen, the Vampire Diaries was a kind of very supportive fandom in the same way that a lot of CW show fans are, I guess. I mean, I'm a fan of CW shows. I watch a lot of them, and it is good to just talk to people about the shows that they like rather than, why are you still watching this? You don't want those fans.
No, I just think that's a negative space to hold, and realistically, like a lot of people, the negative things are their life isn't going well, or that's kind of how they talk to themselves, and they're not having a great life, likely. So when people are cruel and bully and mean, I mean, why create that? Why put that out in the world? It's really and truly, if you're doing that, it doesn't make your life better. It makes it worse. Because you're bringing that, you're attracting that sort of thing into your life, and then they just become more and more bitter or angry or hostile, whatever it is that they're putting out there, they bring into their life, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, very unfortunate. Dark Matter, that's a show we love on this site, on Kneel Before Blog. Joe Malozzi has been really good to us as well. We've interviewed him before, and he keeps retweeting us and stuff. So spoke to Jeff Tervanian in the past, and he talked about how he was never sure if he was be needed again after completing a run of episodes. And your character had a similar ending. That must have been really interesting to sort of not know where you were going next as well. That was certainly his experience. So what was it like being on Dark Matter? I mean, it seems like it's one of those scrappy little shows where, everyone's like campaigning to keep it in everyone's minds.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was a great crew, a great cast, and the creatives on it were really wonderful. And it was just a lot of fun. There was a lot of people who liked that show. So I think, how many seasons did Dark Matter go? 3 or 4? I can't remember.
It's 3.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 until cancellation.
Yeah, good people.
Yeah, and then Joe Malozzi seems to be fully engaged and sort of promoting it out there. It's great reading his blog and stuff. So I imagine he must have been a great person to be around.
Yeah, I think that was his baby. And he poured his heart and soul into it. So something that obviously he wants to continue, but also I think that he's a very talented guy, and I'm sure he'll conjure up more wonderful ideas and concepts and shows.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I look forward to seeing what he does next, and and Dark Matter was something quite special in its little bubble that it was in.
Yeah, I agree.
So, on to Krypton. You said that you had no idea that Adam had a jetpack. Did you do any kind of research once you were cast to figure out what he was about, or did you just go on the journey with him throughout the run of the show?
No, that's your job as an artist, is to research. So as soon as I got it, I began my research, and DC, people over at DC, particularly Dan Evans, was just so fantastic and sent me a big box of Adam Strange gear. Not gear, Adam Strange comics, that I just went through with a fine-tooth comb and looked for the through lines. Because every comic changes, right? Circumstances change. The character kind of changes a little bit, but the through line is there. What they're about, what they do, kind of who they are at their core is there. So over the course of 15 comics, somewhere around there, 15, 20, and you get this sense of who he is. And I went, okay, so this is the kind of guy that he is, and this is what I need to go for. And there's a kind of tongue-in-cheek quality to him, even in the comics, that I went, okay, I can play with that. And he's different, He goes to a world, he's teleported from Earth to Ran, So he's in a completely different world, and for all intents and purposes, he is strange to everyone that's there. Which means he's different. And he becomes, they don't really go into much detail as to the becoming Adam Strange, becoming Adam Strange, which I think is what we delved into on Krypton. Cameron Welsh and I spoke about it, and he just said this is before Adam Strange is the Adam Strange that everyone knows in the comics. So we're really looking at the genesis of him and him becoming the hero of Ran. So I got to go, okay, I have a little bit of freedom to forge who this guy is and where he comes from, and to show other qualities that are seemingly more human, right?
Yeah.
They're fascinated with how the hero became the hero, right? Everyone knows the hero that came out of the Dark Forest having conquered the beasts within it and made it safe. And they come back a hero, right? Hercules with the lion skin on his head.
Yeah.
Wow, that's he slayed this lion. But what I think people are very fascinated by is what was he like before he slayed that lion? What was Adam like before he donned this jetpack and became the hero of Ran? And that's something that is talked about by Joseph Campbell, who I'm a big fan of, in like The Hero with a Thousand Faces, or The Power of Myth. He talks about the hero's journey. And that lays out the groundwork for all of us in our lives, that we all experience the journey of the hero in some way, in some form or another, such as Adam becoming the hero of Ran. It is the same archetypal journey that somebody goes through trying to become who they want to become in their life, get the promotion that they want to get, let go of their old habits in their life and ties that they had to who they were in high school, to becoming a better man or a better woman and finding the love of their life. It's all a journey, and they're going to be faced with things that block them. They're going to be faced with their fears. They're going to be faced with obstacles, and they have to overcome them. Sometimes those are financial obstacles. Sometimes those are real, legitimate physical obstacles like people. But we all have to go on this journey, and that was the journey that I was particularly interested in with Adam. And then I was looking forward to as well getting into the real physical journey of it, which is he becomes the hero, and then now he's doing heroic acts. But you first have to start with the hero within to get to the hero without, or on the outside.
Yeah. And when you meet him in the show, he's very much looking for acceptance. It's like the mentions that the Justice League don't take him seriously, and he wants to kind of prove himself by fixing the timeline. So that must have been so much fun to play. This kind of insecurity.
It was just fun to lay those Easter eggs as well. And just set everything up and go, okay, this is the world that this guy comes from. And then you fast forward all the way through the series, and you get to Nyssa landing on Ran and seeing a lot of people. There was a discussion, I think it's going on right now, that people are saying, are those parademons or are those Thanagarians? And for me, and my understanding, and those are Thanagarians, and Thanagar has invaded Ran. She goes forward in the timeline to Ran-Thanagar War. So
and then there's the tease of Darkseid with the Omega symbol and all that kind of stuff as well.
Just with that alone, we were looking at an incredibly titillating third season.
Yeah, it seemed like they were going all out for the third season, should it exist, and with loads of ambition. There seems to be just so much to build on from the end of season 2.
Yeah.
But I really liked that he found acceptance on Krypton. That conversation he had with Val about family and how he considers himself part of that family now, and what was supposed to an assignment for him at first has become this kind of deeply personal thing.
Yeah, and changes him at his core.
Yeah.
In the comics, Adam is with Superman. He spends a decent amount of time with him. So the fact that he goes back in time and then he's with his grandfather, with Seg, and that connection with the elves is what changes him and helps him to become a real hero, is exciting.
Yeah, and you actually have an amazing ability to have this kind of great natural dynamic with everyone you interact with. I really liked the Adam and Kem dynamic in season 2. I thought that was just brilliantly developed. But, his connection with everybody he spoke to was great. And so it's probably a pretty cliched question, but did these kind of dynamics form naturally as to how you interacted with the other actors? Or was there so much kind of extra work put in to make sure that these scenes popped?
Well, first of all, thank you. But it's an interesting thing. There's a thing called chemistry, and they do these things called chemistry tests to see if people have chemistry together. No one, to my knowledge, on Krypton had any chemistry tests. So we're all cast individually based on our abilities and whether or not they felt we fit the role, I suppose. So showing up and everybody kind of having chemistry with one another was a great, great gift, and it makes your work so much easier. So there is some work, obviously, to be done. You have to prep your scene and make your choices. But in terms of having a naturalness with someone where it makes sense, that's kind of, a little bit in your hands, but it's mostly out of your hands. So I think I was just fortunate enough to work with very talented artists that, by the grace of God, we all had chemistry with one another. And I will say this. Rasmus Hardiker, who plays Kem, is just a supreme talent. On that show, I've worked with some people that I think are extremely talented. Rasmus Hardiker is Aaron Pierre is another, and Bomo, Emmett Scanlon, Cameron Cuff, Cameron Welsh, the showrunner, I think is a massive talent. Everyone on that show is extremely, extremely talented. So it was my joy to be able to work with and to be up there with someone, especially like Raz, who's so spontaneous and will just go off with things. Really makes you have to listen. And it was, I learned a lot working with him. I learned a lot working with Emmett. I learned a lot working with Cameron. It was just, it was wonderful.
And you were sort of fortunate to have a powerhouse like Colin Salmon on set as well. He's...
yes, absolutely.
Sort of veteran character actor who just disappears into everything he does. And his Zod is my favourite Zod in live action.
Takes his work, very seriously.
I imagine it must be quite intimidating standing there doing a scene where he's in full Zod mode.
Yeah, and he's a big man as well,
yeah.
But he's a tremendous actor. So he, from what I could see, and my take on it is he kind of approached his scenes almost like a conductor, like a classical conductor. He was able to put in the deep bass into his portrayal of Zod, and then also play with it with the lightness of the flute at times. He really, really took the audience on a journey with that character.
Yeah, for sure. What was it like working with a lot of digital elements? Because obviously Krypton has a lot of visual effects. I imagine that must have been somewhat new for you in that respect, just having a lot of CGI as in, look here, there's nothing here yet, but there will be eventually.
Yeah, it's a little weird because they just will put X's up, right? X's of tape, and then you have to imagine. So you're asking a lot of questions. You're going, what is there? What am I looking at? What is this? And then they, tell you, and okay, you take a couple of minutes to try and really make it detailed so that it's real. But that's all part of your work as an actor.
Yeah, acting against tennis balls on sticks and being terrified of Doomsday and things like that.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and being terrified of Doomsday, that was a big thing there. I said on set, listen, this has to be extreme because Adam is the only one who knows what Doomsday is like.
Yeah.
And what he can do. And he's essentially the apocalypse. So it'd be like if you've seen the apocalypse, you've seen that it just destroys everything, that no one's alive, everything's gone, right? Like almost like the road. And then you're here now, and you see the thing that is going to cause that or could cause that. It would invoke such fear and stress, and you would be beyond afraid of this thing. Whereas other people, having heard about the apocalypse and whatever else, would be probably like, yo, chill out. It's probably, people are fascinated by that. Probably wouldn't be that bad. I'd go in the woods with a fucking rifle. So for Adam, I just went, he's the eyes for the audience. He's the only human being on that show. And he's the one who has to really show some fear and stress about it so that we know as an audience, this is really, really dire. This is some serious, this isn't, oh, cool, we'll have a little scrap and it'll be all right. It's like, this everyone can die.
I loved his line about the only person that could take this doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
That was a really powerful line. Just kind of outlines the stakes right there, just in one shot.
Yep. And that's the talent of the writing staff that was on Krypton.
Yeah,
Constantly
absolutely.
coming up with beautiful storylines and beautiful ways of expressing these storylines. Dialogue, just wonderful. A real gift.
Yeah. What was the kind of on-set atmosphere like? I always like hearing about maybe pranks that the cast play on each other or things like that, in between takes. Was there any of that going on? Or
Of course. You have Rasmus on set, and I would say he was the local prank. So it was just a lot of fun, and the set was light. It was a place that fostered creativity, and that I put up to Cameron Welsh. He truly supported an atmosphere of play, which encourages and allows you to try things and to fail, because that creates life. That creates a show that's compelling, that's alive and breathing, which is what I think is the job. So, these sets that create an atmosphere of fear, don't muddle your lines. Get it done. We're moving on, right? That sort of atmosphere is not conducive for creativity. And I don't know many places like that have created good art, because art doesn't thrive under fear.
yeah, no one wants a toxic atmosphere anywhere, really.
No. Any sort of you need, there's some, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have rules on set, or like, hey, we got to move on, or we got to get this. That happens. But in terms of a general atmosphere, I don't think that it should be an atmosphere of stress and fear and someone staring at you going, you better say all these lines verbatim or else. I mean, the job of the actor is to say the lines, and so you do prep it. But you can't be up there worried if you said we are or we're. It just doesn't. It's not conducive for creativity.
Yeah, fair. So can you think of any specific sort of pranks or whatever, just any kind of funny stories that come to mind that you're obviously allowed to talk about?
Well, there was a lot of fun stuff that we did on set. There was a whole thing with Hannah and myself, who plays Jax, that it wasn't written that Adams kind of had a crush on Jax and that Jax maybe kind of liked it. That was something we came up with. And there's a lot of stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor just simply because it's a cable show and you're bound to a time limit. So if the thing has to be 46 minutes, whereas if it's streaming, you don't necessarily have to do that. If you take a look at streaming shows that you watch, you'll see that the runtime for each episode is different. It might be 50 minutes, and then another one might be an hour and 3, and one might be 48. So those runtimes change based on the flow of that episode, which allows you a better show, right? It allows you to let things breathe. It allows you to pace things up if you want. It allows you to tell the story in the way that you think is compelling. Whereas when you have runtime and you have commercials, you may cut an episode together and we got to trim out by 5 minutes too long. You got to start cutting stuff. Sometimes scenes are drastically cut. The stuff that happens, ad-libs and things that I think are the characters. They're kind of a looking glass window into who they are and what make you really like it, in my opinion. For example, Jax and I had this thing where she has one eye, and so she's just blinking. And I made a joke that it's her winking at him. Right? But really, she's just blinking. And a lot of that, there might be one instance of it, but we were doing it throughout the season, but a lot of that stuff got cut. We had another thing with Adam, Cam Welsh, and I thought it was hilarious. Adam is just terrible with the Zeta beam landings, and he's smashing into everything. And I would land, and I would hurt myself. The opening thing is I crash in season 2. I crash into Candor, and you hear me say, right in the Johnson. And I come out and I'm rubbing my shoulder. And then later in the woods, I crash down and kind of cover my crotch and I think I say something like my elbow or something like that. I was just consistently messing up the anatomy, right? Rubbing a different part of my body and saying a different word for it. At the end, had a thing where Val is trying to contact Seg as Doomsday is wreaking havoc on the moon. And I slide and fall and then jump up. And if you look at it, I'm holding my hand on my lower back. And on the day we were laughing about it, but I was holding my lower back going, oh, my neck. And so just messing these things up, which I thought were funny. And the little quirks that you hook into where you go, that's him, that's ridiculous, that fans like to talk about. That, I remember on shows where you had these little idiosyncrasies that's kind of that's fucking hilarious. That's who that character is. That a lot of those got cut because of time.
Yeah.
So those, I would say, are the gem I think fans don't know about, but we certainly knew about, and we would be laughing hysterically on set.
Yeah, and it's funny that Nyssa can land perfectly with the Zeta beam in our first use.
Exactly. And that's part of it. That's fully intentional. They went, let's make Adam just never be able to land well with it, and have Nyssa just land effortlessly. And go, oh, that was easy.
Well, that's a great anecdote, so I'm sure people will enjoy hearing that, and when they rewatch the show, just kind of keep that in mind in the background whenever the Zeta beam gets used.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but with the big DC crossover over in the CW happening, the Crisis on Infinite Earths one, obviously Adam was a big part of some of the Crisis events in the comics. So were you guys ever approached, at all about being included at any point, or is it just contractually impossible?
I don't think it's contractually impossible. We'll see what happens with that. There may be something that happens with that, but we'll see. It's trying to be sorted out.
Slight tease there, then.
Yeah.
So where did you want to see Adam progress to in the next season? You were talking about the kind of hero of Ran. So is that where you saw him going? Obviously, if there's plans and then it ends up getting picked up, then don't spoil them here. But just in terms of where you would like it to go or where you saw it going.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. It was going into the hero of Ran, and we would have been playing with stuff on Earth. Obviously, Seg with the Yellow Sun, and Brainiac has Jor-El. So then you have Jor-El possibly in a Yellow Sun, and Adam knowing what the Yellow Sun does to a Kryptonian. So he would have to bring Seg to Earth in order to battle that, and then we would go to Ran, and there'd be things going on there. Ran Thanagar War, and Nyssa, and obviously we would meet Alana and Sardath. So we were getting into that world, and I do think that Adam's world is fascinating and has a lot to offer, and I think fans would love to see that. I do get people messaging me quite a bit about having an Adam Strange show, and DC is doing this Strange Adventures that they're going to be releasing in 2020. Mm-hmm. You never know. Hopefully I'm able to continue this journey with Adam in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, never say never. I mean, you see things get brought back all the time, so it's not impossible.
And, I think that Adam's a fan favorite. And, again, it's just he opens the doors to a lot of very cool, interesting things.
And you're the first actor to get to play with him as well.
That's right. And hopefully I get to keep playing Adam Strange.
I hope so, too. So have you got anything else kind of waiting in the wings? If obviously Krypton doesn't get picked up again, have you got kind of other things that you're planning to make or in talks for?
There are some things, but I'm not going to mention them because I'm slightly superstitious in a way about that. But there's a couple of things that I'm working on. There's something that I've written that I'm getting the funds for that that I'm going to direct. And then there's some other projects that I'm in the talks. So we'll see how those things go. You never know until you're on set, until things are end and done.
Cool. Well, I wish you all the best with everything that you're looking to get into. Really hope it works out for you.
Thank you, brother, and likewise.
Thank you. So, final question, just a bit of a light note to end on. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I'm going to stick with what I said earlier, which is to fly. I just think as a kid, it's just something that there's a freedom to it. And throughout history, I think that man has been obsessed with flying. The human race has always been obsessed with flying. That's why the Wright brothers are so well known, because they were the ones who crafted, essentially, who attained first flight. I just think it would be really, really interesting and fun and cool. And then I get cast as Strange, and that's another reason I want to continue with them, so that I can get to fly.
You wouldn't have to pay for a flight ever again. Right, thank you very much for that answer. That was a good answer. Flight's quite a popular one. I can see why. Wouldn't be for me. I'm afraid of heights, so it wouldn't be much for me.
I'm afraid of heights as well, but I think it's different if you're flying.
I suppose if I know that I won't fall and die, I assuage my fear of heights a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in a plane, are you afraid?
No, I don't mind the flying as long as I don't look out the window. I'm usually fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just if I'm up high and I'm aware of up high, I'm like, no, get me down from here.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just one of my neuroses. We all have them.
Yep.
Yeah.
That we do.
Okay, well, I won't take up any more of your time, so thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Krypton's a show I've loved since it first aired. I've stuck with it, enjoyed it ever since it started, and Adam is a big part of why I enjoy it, so it's been absolutely great to be able to pick your brain about it.
Oh, great. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. It's, my pleasure to be on your podcast, and I wish you all the best.
And to you. Thank you very much. That was my interview with Shaun Sipos. A big thanks to him for taking the time to chat to me and give me some really amazing insight into Krypton. I hope you'll join me in praying to Rao for Krypton to be picked up post-cancellation. If you liked what you heard, then you can subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, or any major podcasting app. If you want to discuss this interview or anything else, you can contact us on Facebook or Twitter on Kneel Before Blog, or leave a comment on kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. For more chatter and interviews, you can join us again on Kneel Before Pod.